In 1995, John Suk founded Deep Elm Records. Today, 20 years later, Deep Elm Records boasts over 220 releases. We celebrate the pioneering spirit and the awesome artists that make up Deep Elm Records each week here on the unofficial Deep Elm Podcast. The unofficial Deep Elm Podcast begins now. Hello and welcome to the 19th episode of the unofficial Deep Elm Podcast. I am your host, Alan Wayne, and tonight we continue our series of podcasts on the ever-important, ever-awesome Emo Diaries series. Chapter 10 is what we will be profiling tonight. It is called The Hope I Hide Inside. Now, just a little bit of backstory about this chapter. This was to be the final chapter of the Emo Diaries, released June 23rd, 2004. And the reason it was to be the final chapter, well, number one, John and the folks over at Deep Elm decided to go another direction with a new sampler, or not a sampler, but a new compilation series entitled This Is Indie Rock. They did 3 volumes of This Is Indie Rock. And they just decided to do something different after a while. And secondly, and most of all, well, it reminds me of the Green Day song, There's No Return to 86, and I'll tell you why. If you've ever heard that song by Green Day, it talks about a band that gets signed and goes on to fame and fortune, but how they will never be able to play their old haunt, 86, up in San Francisco. It was actually a place up in San Francisco that either was called 86 or was called 86 for the song, where bands, if they decided to sell out, I guess, or get a signed deal or something like that with a major record label, they were 86'd. I guess that's where the term came from. They were basically not allowed to play anymore at that venue because they had sold out and they were not being true to their roots, I guess. I'm not sure. Something to the effect of, once you sign with a major record label, you've sold out, there you go. Well, you're probably wondering, you rambling fool, what does this have to do with the Emo Diaries? Well, at one point, John got sick and tired of what he called the bastardization of the term emo. Keep in mind, he came up with the term when he was trying to think of album jackets, and the emotional diaries just did not fit. So he decided to call them the Emo Diaries. All of a sudden, 7 years after he begins this undertaking and it becomes huge, mainstream gets a hold of the word emo, and all of a sudden it turns into something different. It turns into something actually not what he expected. It turns into a trend, a fashion, similar to when Perry Ellis started selling flannels during the grunge era. It's kind of when you know that's jumped the shark. That saying from Happy Days when Henry Winkler, a.k.a. the Fonz, jumped over a shark with his motorcycle. It was termed then that Happy Days went downhill after that, and it signaled its demise. For John, the Emo Diaries was so much more than a genre or a hairstyle or a pair of pants fitting a little too tight. The Emo Diaries is music that makes one feel, music that is enjoyed on several different levels, music that enters your ears and fills your soul with emotion, joy, pain, sadness. That's what the Emo Diaries means to John. That's what emo means to a lot of people. And there are a lot of people that don't get it right. There are a lot of people who think that emo is a certain type of music. And then they've broken it up into other different genres, such as screamo, shoegaze, etc. In the end, it's much more simple than that when it comes to the Emo Diaries. It's about music that makes one feel. And I hope that tonight, the selections that have been chosen both by Deep Elm Insiders and myself, we decided to give old JB the week off, will give you a little bit of a taste of that emotion and make you feel something as they were meant to. As usual, we're going to get to some reviews here right quick. First, this is from Kill the Noise. Quote, documenting an evolution for 8 years, the Emo Diaries is definitely about the music. Getting us off to a solid start on Chapter 10, The Hope I Hide Inside, is Oliver with some appropriately upbeat rock. The Comp's international colors are shown on Jerusalem's My Name is Nobody. Their extremely raw punk rock slips into some savage hardcore vocals, creating a dramatic and interesting sound. Representing the UK are The Holiday Plan and Latitude Blue, the former an energetic blast of emo-punk providing one of the best moments of the CD. The latter robust and quite catchy indie rock. Deep Elm's own Sounds Like Violence don't fail to deliver with their song. It's a degree mellower and more straightforward than their EP, but still has the slightly deranged vocals and is definitely quality. Also doing the label proud are Lock and Key, their throaty singer prominent as usual on their blistering melodic punk effort. Hercules Hercules flaunt their arty, angular flair with strong nods toward the Blood Brothers, while Lukestar's song, a definite highlight, is cutting yet unexpectedly catchy. Closing the series is a weighty responsibility, but the silent type managed to live up to the task with a suitably relaxing and sublimely melodic rock reminiscent of the Appleseed Cast. All in all, a fine collection with lots of passionate songs, as one would expect. While Chapter 10 marks an end of an era for the Emo Diaries, you'll be happy to hear that Deep Elm has an all-new compilation series. This is indie rock. I can't wait. So there was quite a bit of optimism towards This Is Indie Rock, but you have to know the backstory about the Emo Diaries and what the Emo Diaries really means to appreciate the entire series, in my opinion. So, without further ado, we're going to get to the music which really matters. This is Oliver with the song Straightest Jacket on the Emo Diaries, Chapter 10, The Hope I Hide Inside. This is Alan Wayne, and this is episode 19 of the unofficial Deep Elm podcast.
Rest my head. I hope I never wake up for this hell to pay. Maybe there's something, oh well. Heart beats fast, muscles tight when I get sick. I get uptight. Well, maybe I'm dreaming, oh well. I can't believe it, life has no meaning. Can't stop the bleeding, I'm not so old. Can't believe it, life has no meaning. I'm not stable. I think it's work, I think it's you. I get quiet when I smell your soap. Well, maybe there's nothing, oh well. I can't believe it, life has no meaning. Can't stop the bleeding, I'm not so old. Can't believe it, life has no meaning. Can't stop the bleeding, I'm not so old. Can't believe it, love has no meaning. I'm not stable, I'm not stable. Keep on breathing, I'm not so, I had my head checked, I had my head checked for the straightest jacket. Straightest jacket. Straightest jacket. Straight jacket. I can't believe it, life has no meaning. Can't stop the beating,
Thank you for tuning in, as always, to the unofficial Deep Elm podcast. This is episode 19, profiling Chapter 10 of the Emo Diaries, The Hope I Hide Inside. That was Oliver with Straightest Jacket. That opens up the CD, actually. And that is also one of the Deep Elm Insider picks. Now, we're going to come up with another one here in just a moment by My Name is Nobody, called Brother Abel. But we're going to read some reviews to start off here. A very well-reviewed album here. This is from True Punk. The 10th and final installment of the Emo Diaries is packed with some of the finest songs I've heard on a compilation. You can literally find any song for any moment of your life on this. The Hope I Hide Inside is filled with intensity, passion, honesty, and emotion. I especially enjoyed songs from My Name is Nobody, The Holiday Plan, and Sounds Like Violence. There are some awesome tunes from bands like Oliver, Lock and Key, and Lukestar too. The fact that most of the bands on this comp are unsigned and independent makes it even better, reminding every listener what DIY really means. I will miss you, Emo Diaries. That is from True Punk. So, at this point, everybody was thinking that the Emo Diaries was over, and it would be 7 long years until Deep Elm put out another chapter in this seminal series. But right now we're going to enjoy some more from Chapter 10. Here is My Name is Nobody out of Jerusalem with Brother Abel, here on episode 19 of the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, profiling the Emo Diaries Chapter 10, The Hope I Hide Inside. My pleasure to be with you wherever you are listening to the unofficial Deep Elm podcast. This is episode 19, and we are profiling Chapter 10 of the Emo Diaries, The Hope I Hide Inside, which many thought, probably including John and the folks at Deep Elm, would be the last episode of the Emo Diaries. More reviews on this last episode of the Emo Diaries. This comes from Delusions of Adequacy, old friends of the Emo Diaries. Quote, I could write pages on what Deep Elm did with the Emo Diaries, highlighting so many talented bands from around the world in so many diverse styles. The first two volumes are perhaps the most important compilation albums in independent rock. Along the way, the label found some amazing bands, flirted with all of emo's subgenres, and paved the way for a style that was vastly important in indie rock. On Chapter 10, The Hope I Hide Inside, the label is holding nothing back. The Israeli band My Name Is Nobody, which you just heard, offers a great mix of in-your-face punk, hardcore, and emo with some surprisingly lo-fi screaming. Bailey Drive's song is a nice blast of emo core that I can't get out of my head, and Lock and Key's track may be the best hot water music song they never wrote. Deep Elm's latest find, Sounds Like Violence, is brilliant on the album's best track. To replace Emo Diaries, Deep Elm is offering This Is Indie Rock. I have little doubt that the new series will again introduce me to bands I need to hear more of and to styles that are on the cutting edge. That's the legacy of the Emo Diaries. And you know something about Deep Elm Records, they are always on the cutting edge. Right now their latest release comes from a band, their latest release was their sampler, but it features a band called Floating in Space, cinematic post-rock, and I've shared some of the tracks from Floating in Space with some people, and they are blown away. I mean, Deep Elm is so far ahead of its time, it's unreal. So I just am in awe every time I think about Deep Elm Records and how they have preceded trends. Real trend makers in the business, and you can buy all of their material on a name-your-price basis at www.deepelm.com, including this track from Sounds Like Violence, called A Beautiful Sight, here on episode 19 of the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, chapter 10, The Hope I Hide Inside, from the seminal Emo Diaries collection.
Yesterday was an awful day. Today I can barely sit upright. And tonight I'll probably be out and fight. 'Cause I have never had love. Bring me the light, such a beautiful sight. Lean on me, let's leave this place together. Such fun, it's all gone, and I'm only complaining. Oh, I think we're growing old. What have we done? Yeah, we have done nothing. Such a beautiful sight. Lean on me, let's leave this place together. leave this place together alone. When you're here, I feel alone. That's strange. We used to talk much.
Sounds Like Violence. You can find quite a bit of their material when you go to www.deepelm.com and name your price. Well, we're about to wrap up this retrospective on Chapter 10, The Hope I Hide Inside, from the ever-important Emo Diaries series. Just want to let you know that next week we will come back with episode 20 of the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, featuring the return 7 years later of the Emo Diaries, this time Chapter 11, Taking Back What's Ours. It seems like John and the boys at Deep Elm had a little bit of the 7-year itch and had to come back and fix this grievous error that mainstream music had made. So I am looking forward to that. One of my favorite acts on that is a band called While You Were Gone. Just completely awesome band with a female lead singer. Reminds me of Paramore, but there's so much good on there, I can't say anything. It would take way too long just to say what I want to say about the last two chapters that I will be profiling in episodes 20 and 21 of the unofficial Deep Elm podcast. Finally, I'd like to I'd like to share with you guys what John and I spoke about this last week, and I hope he doesn't mind that I share this with you guys. He and I talked about this particular chapter, and what we discussed was basically the music and everything else. I asked him what Chapter 10 meant to him, and he replied, "Chapter 10 was about hoping to find love after love. Great chapter. 2 Deep Elm bands appeared, Sounds Like Violence and Lock and Key, both great tracks. Really love the songs by My Name Is Nobody, Holiday Plan, The Silent Type." He goes on, naming basically every track. He says, "Damn, they are all so good." And then he says the reviews say it all. Yes, the reviews do say it all. In fact, this one from Rock Sound. "After a long stint, The Hope I Hide Inside is the 10th and final chapter of the Emo Diaries, a series of compilations infamous amongst emo kids. Deep Elm handpicked the unreleased tracks, and the likes of Jimmy Eat World, Sweep the Leg Johnny, and The Movie Life have all graced an Emo Diaries CD throughout the years. Exiting on a high, Chapter 10 takes a nod to the future with the likes of The Holiday Plan and the melodically delicious Oliver, along with Lock and Key and Sounds Like Violence. Go on, complete your collection." And then there's a mention about the final track, and I think I read that earlier, about the heaviness of ending the Emo Diaries. Like the final track of the Emo Diaries. The first track of the Emo Diaries Chapter 1 was Jimmy Eat World's opener. And that's pretty amazing. And to be the last track on Emo Diaries, or so we thought, would be just as much of a weight. But this band that ends Chapter 10 and basically closed out the Emo Diaries for a while, The Silent Type. It's one of my favorite tracks, and this is my pick for this week. The Silent Type, to close out this chapter of the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, the Emo Diaries, and, well, the whole series, really, until, well, a few years later, they come out with another one. So, all in all, this is a fine collection of music, and you guys need to grab chapters 1 through 10, and you can name your price on it, whatever you feel, because Deep Elm is not about taking all of your money. They are about sharing beautiful music and sharing wonderful music that makes you feel and think. That's what they've always been about. So, in any case, it's my pleasure to share this wonderful, iconic label with you. And we're going to close this particular chapter out with Prime Noctis from The Silent Plan, or The Silent... The Silent Type, excuse me. The Silent Plan. What am I doing? It's a little late here on the West Coast, so... All right, for all of us here at the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, myself, and the ever amazing Jason Barr. We wish you good night, and thank you for listening to the unofficial Deep Elm podcast.
Possession had always been